there was a company coming up from Seattle called GAIS, G-A-I-S, and I was lucky enough to persuade the CEO to say, I'm new to the business, help me, what should I know? If you aren't keeping a daily P&L, you'll never know where it went wrong.
Daily.
And I'd never
Which back then meant it was all manual too.
Never heard of that concept prior to that.
One of the things that we do talk about in the book is that, yes, there's the new 4 Ps, but similar to what we just talked about in terms of your role, if it's not backed up by great leadership, the 4 Ps really are just things. It's the leadership, the drive. And we've identified through the research when we wrote the book that there are really 6 key factors around what define that brand leadership success. And there's a couple of them that I'd love to have you speak on because, again, I know you've got wonderful stories. And it goes back to our beer years again, but an interesting twist that some people we talk about becoming #1 again against Molson, but you've got an interesting story around those success factors that you give them a little bit of a pat in the back.
Indeed. As context for a more practical answer of how do you behave as a leader and what would be pragmatically good, I would just like to throw compliments to Molson, emblematic of our major competitor, and every one of us has got major competitors out there. Studying your competitor is a source of great knowledge and learning. And Molson did some things that were very important to me. They had the wisdom, their leadership had the wisdom to know what was the right thing to do for them. Labatt, as #1, had tried to buy #3 and was unsuccessful. Molson knew that that's what they needed to do to get leadership, and they had the skill sets to do it.
Right.
Very tricky in a highly regulated environment, and getting that through the competition authorities. But they had those skills, so they had the dream, they had the skill sets, they had the financial acumen to pay the price, not only for the acquisition, but also for the restructuring that had to follow.
And this was the acquisition of Carling O'Keefe.
O'Keefe. And your audience likely wouldn't remember pre-free trade, the only way you could sell beer in Canada was to have a brewery in each province. So we had 3 big competitors, 30 breweries, all subscale, and free trade was coming. So rationalization of the breweries in an industry that's very steep scale curve, cost sensitive, was vital.
Right.
And they paid the price. At that time, severance for closure was about 1 year, typically, for unionized employees. And they basically negotiated with the government, I think privately, and with the unions to pay 2 years, an unthinkable amount.
Which many at first would go, that's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And I would just invite you to consider shareholder value is usually a combination of things which we can talk about another day. But in part, it's expressed as a multiple of EBIT or EBITDA or even after tax. But let's say EBIT. If your EBIT multiple is 15 and you pay 2 times earnings, profit, to have those costs go away, you're overnight better off by 13 times what you just wrote off.
Right.
I know there's a human cost to it, but it was an instant change in value and an instant change in competitiveness. So I learned from them, and looked at the Labatt situation when I started and said, if we want to get there and we'll come to the mission, we have to be for radical change. We were severely disadvantaged by the clever things that Molson had done.
I remember sitting in a conference room after you had made the decisions on how do we play the game that Molson had just taught us. And I remember all of us, I think it was the director level and above, directors and VPs, I can't remember the number of people that would have been sitting there, but there was a few of us. And you went through all the logic and had everybody nodding. It made so much sense. The logic was there. And you said, look to your left, look to your right, because starting next week, 2 of you will be gone.
Yes.
That certainly got everyone's attention, but there was nobody pushing back because they saw the logic, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting that you're saying here a competitor actually helped you with that logic.
Yes.
And that's a great learning because that shows maturity as well as a business leader. Yes. So that's wonderful.
And on the part of the employees.
Yeah.
It's been my experience that you must start with frontline employees and customers to find out what's working and what's not working. And if you recall, at that time, previous generations had committed Labatt to be moving from one downtown Toronto office to another. And employees are smart. They could figure out that there weren't enough desks and places to handle. So when I said, look left, look right, and one of you hasn't got a spot to go, it was only telling them what they knew. And it gave it, therefore, as you say, great credibility. They knew.
So that's a perfect launch to the point I'd love you to talk about, because I know you are adamant on this, and I agree with you. You can talk about leadership and strategic thinking and strategic business planning, but at the end of the day, a great strat plan poorly executed is a bad strat plan. Mm-hmm. So you always say, how do you get it done? Yep. So I'd love you to share your wisdom on that.
You must reach a point where you're very confident that the plan will work, that the early steps will build confidence in those executing and in shareholders who are supporting and are not getting nervous at what you're doing. And then it must have an expression that appeals and motivates to the organization at large. So there's a lot of upfront work with, as I said, customers and frontline employees to figure out what do we have to do. Yeah. Once we were at the point where we did it, time spent getting the leadership aligned and then employees aligned. And I found it very helpful to have a simple expression that a proud organization could line up behind. Said, Labatt for years has been the leader in Canada with all that leadership makes. We have a very competitive partner in Molson who has bought with skill the leading position in Canada, and we are severely disadvantaged in scale, in market share, and in cost structure. Our mission is simply to earn it back, to earn back what Labatt proudly has held and will hold again. We will build our business 1 share point a year for 5 years, and at the end of that, we will be number 1 again. Simple mission reported once a year. Employees could find it easy to be excited and motivated and basically say that's where it belongs.
So talk about alignment, though, because, I mean, it was a huge organization. So, aligning everybody might be too big a task, but lining the right people is a very important element. And I'd love to, what was the toughest part of creating that alignment for you?
Again, it comes back to communication. Wins, especially early wins, that it's working. There's nothing like success to encourage people that these guys know what they're doing. I don't know them. They come from a weird place, but
it's working.
Talk funny in my case, but it's working. Let's keep going. And for another day, you know that one of my personal beliefs is how you agree on budgets and compensation is a very important factor in reinforcing that it's working and that people are doing the right thing, the ones that you really want them to do. So all of those were elements of the plan, and persuading people that the details of the plan made sense. As a small technique comment, if I may, I know you would have gone with us through this journey, but we had outsiders helping us with up-to-date ideas for better managing. And something that came to us was learning on support and agree. It was working. We were building a plan that employees were excited by, and we took ourselves away for a 2-day seminar with the leadership team on building a long-range plan beyond where we were. And after one day, the day was frustrating everybody. We could not agree what that plan should say. And the moderators from outside came to me and said, I think what we have to do is time out. First thing tomorrow morning, ask each of the leaders in the room what it is we do not want to do. And there you've got 10 provinces, many different equivalent to countries, cultures, languages. Mm-hmm. What is it you do not want to do? And once that was up on flip charts around the room, we then started to discuss, so what does that leave us? If we don't want to be that, which was pretty much uniform, what do we want to be? And it came together rather quickly. Yep. Boom, aligned, let's go.
That's interesting.
So as a technique, and what it required us to do was to compromise a little bit. Mm-hmm. So at the end of a big decision that was emerging, my role was to say, on a 10-point scale, do you agree, each of the leaders, and will you support it? And there would usually be a mixture. It could be, I'm right on, I'm all in, 10. And I'm going out of here and I'm going to support it to my management team, 10. Other geographies, countries might say, I don't really agree, but I have that's 5, no problem supporting it. Yeah. I'll go out and say, for them, this is the right thing to do. Yeah. And when we would come to a leader who would be saying, I'm only 7 on the agree list, and I'm not really enthusiastic about supporting it to my team because I don't believe in it, my focus would then be on you 3. Specifically, what do you need the plan to say in order to move the agree higher, closer to 10, and go out of here and support it? And they would write on a flip chart, and we'd go around the table saying, can you guys get there? And usually there was room to move, and we'd end up with, okay, a little bit of compromise, but we're ready to march.
I go back to what you were talking about earlier, disaggregation. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
Excellent.
It's a disaggregation.
Excellent.
But you always got that level of alignment. Everyone might not have agreed fully, but they were all in.
Yes.
They would support it. And
yes.
I think that's why we were able to accomplish what we did.
Yes.
Wonderful. So what must someone do to make sure that they are listening to the right people?
I believe it's always good to start at the front line. Customers and consumers, frontline employees, and work back in. Then depending on what your 5-year plan is trying to accomplish, that you have to pay more attention to. But you need to know what those constituencies all feel about you.